Welcome to the Commentary Magazine Daily Podcast. We're doing a series of podcasts this week about the glories and wonders of our September issue, Commentary, out now on your intranets and will be in your mailbox if you are a subscriber within the next couple of weeks. We don't do this enough. We don't talk about the heart and soul of the magazine enough, which is the magazine, our articles, the pieces, monthly efforts to be authoritative, conclusive, and deep on many topics. And so today we're here to talk to our Washington commentary columnist, James Kirchick. Jamie, you have a piece in the September issue of Commentary about the consultant class, and particularly the Democratic consultants who are responsible for the surge in utility and popularity and controversy of the far left candidates associated and involved with and surrounding the Democratic Socialists of America. But before we get to your piece, I just want to point out you are new, relatively fresh, new to the Washington commentary column, which has been written over time by Andrew Ferguson, by Christine Rosen, by Matt Continetti, and now by you. So what do you look at as your monthly brief in this 2 to 3 page column that is an effort to sort of be a portrait of Washington, official Washington, let's say?
Well, that's a very distinguished pedigree you just recited, so I really have a big burden on my shoulders, but I've really been enjoying it. And I think it's a very broad scope in terms of what I write about, because Washington is really the center of the world. I mean, in the sense that we still are the most powerful country on earth. You can trace pretty much any sort of geopolitical issue back to Washington. I think sort of national social trends and whatnot. Obviously, anti-Semitism, I consider a part of that remit, and I've written about that, quite a lot. Not to my liking, but it keeps on rearing its ugly head. Of course, that it's sort of difficult to avoid. Another trend that I've noticed, just looking at the page here and what's coming out, what we're going to talk about later, I've done a number of hit jobs, really since beginning since I began the column. And I have to say, Eli Lake, who's a very great personal friend and obviously known to our audience, he a long time ago gave me the nickname JK-47 for my ability to take down people who need to be taken down. And, when I think back to really the first big story I had as a journalist was almost 20 years ago when I was at the New Republic, and I discovered former Congressman and then presidential candidate Ron Paul's really just atrociously disgusting newsletters that he put out for almost 20 years. And from there, I've gone on to, take down lots of other figures, including in the pages of Commentary, Seymour Hersh, Nicholas Kristof. And then since starting this column, there's been Yoram Hazony, Steve Bannon, Tucker Carlson. So really, I mean, it's bipartisan. It's by no means am I only going after the left. I mean, it's pretty kind of, I think if you went over the course of my career, you would actually find a pretty even tally on both sides. So that's what it's sort of been over the past couple of months, and what it is in this next column that we're going to discuss. Obviously there's so many idiots, there's so many targets, right? We live in a very target-rich environment. And I enjoy doing them, but I anticipate writing, beyond sort of personalities.
Abe Greenwald, what case can we make positively for what Jamie calls the hit job? That's a classic journalistic term, but usually a pejorative. You say someone's doing a hit job, that's an assassination. It's obviously illegal. But if we were to pull back and not say hit job, but to say a sort of a thoroughgoing, harsh critique of an individual person and their record. There are people who would say, oh, that's not civil, it's not polite. This is just the kind of thing that the Trump era has brought about, people being so nasty to each other, as though stuff like that hasn't been the case with journalism since cuneiform, came into being. But why do we need them?
Well, I think a hit job can really be anything from like a bullet point list of someone's faults to something much more interestingly rendered, which is what Jamie does. So it's not as if all hit jobs are equal. I think what sets Jamie's apart, and I think he is the best at this,
Thank you.
is I think what sets, to be honest, all effective writing apart, which is he's not just attacking people. He gives you insights. These are insightful pieces about people, about their climb, about the milieu in which they travel, and about very often like the paradoxes and hypocrisies involved, which is a sort of an ongoing, I think,
Right.
Thread through these the types of, if we're going to call them hit jobs, I'll just call them takedowns or something, that Jamie does is I think he exposes something deeper about the people that he focuses on.
Okay, so let's take the piece in the September issue of Commentary as our writ here, because this is a piece about the left. As I mentioned, it has a very clever title for reasons we can get into, which is Morris Katz's Blue Oyster Cult. So what we have here is a story about a consultant named Morris Katz and two others whom he works with. Jamie, tell us about Morris Katz, because he is not what you would think of immediately as the grizzled political veteran, cynical, hard-bitten guy who's seen it all and done it all and knows where the bodies are buried and all of that. He's kind of a totally different model.
Yeah, he's not James Carville, let's just say that much. And in fact comes from the complete opposite wing of the Democratic Party as Carville. He led a very privileged life growing up in New York City, the son of a successful television producer. His mother is a sort of artsy children's book author. His godfather was Philip Seymour Hoffman, just to give you an idea of the milieu from which he sprang. Went to a very well-respected public high school in Manhattan, and he's very young. He's 27 now, but he's been doing this for several years. And I would say he first really came to popular attention when Mamdani won, because, all credit to him, he played a very, very pivotal role in elevating Mamdani from this, completely unknown state assemblyman to the mayor of the most important city in America, if not the world. And he was getting a lot of good press over the past couple of months since Mamdani was inaugurated. And I open with some anecdotes from a New York Times profile where the reporter was following him around, and he was on his way to Washington. He had just helped Mamdani prep for his first meeting with Donald Trump, and he was playing Trump in these meetings. But then things started to go awry with the Graham Plattner campaign. So Plattner was kind of brought to his attention by these two sort of lower level consultants, Daniel Moraff and Liana Fan. They are a professional romantic couple. Moraff comes from wealth. Was it what was his
Toys R Us?
Toys R Us, yes.
His grandfather was Toys R Us, and it should be said, Morris Katz's grandfather was one of the richest and most sybaritically corrupt people in the history of the city of Philadelphia. So,
yes.
They both
a great profile that John brought to my attention.
Yeah, 1977 profile. If you go to Google,
97,
look up 97. Excuse me. Look up Harry J. Katz, Philadelphia Magazine. It is one of the best magazine profiles ever written of his almost unimaginably bizarre grandfather. But in other words, so both of them, Moraff and Katz, are not only from privilege, but they are from wealth privilege.
Generational wealth. Yeah.
Generational wealth privilege. And they are both now totally aligned with the most radical politicians in America.
Right. And so I opened the piece. There's this quote that many people heard. It's sort of who knows who coined it, but Donald Trump is a poor person's idea of a rich person. And you instinctively understand what that means. He's like the Monopoly man. I mean, he's literally just like a caricature of a rich person, what like a very simple person would think that a rich person looked like. And I turned that on its head and I said Graham Plattner was a rich person's idea of a poor person. Very condescending attitude, right? So like we assume rich people just think that poor people are all, you know, they beat their wives and they have Nazi tattoos and they're just like horrible human beings but they're gruff and they're tough. And there's a kind of double irony, which is that Plattner himself is not, he also comes from very nice, privileged background. His grandfather was a very well-known architect who designed the interior of the Ford Foundation building and offices, other important works. His father was a lawyer. His mother is the owner of a high-scale restaurant, which is like the main, if not only, client of his supposed oyster fisherman business. So the column is about sort of, you know, the prejudices, the preconceived notions that this kind of progressive consultant class has of working class people and what will appeal to working class people. And we know that Graham Plattner didn't appeal to working class people because while he was running, polls were done and they showed that the Republican incumbent, Susan Collins, was polling over 20% higher among blue collar working class people than Graham Plattner was. So clearly these people, by which I mean Katz and Moraff and the others, they don't really have their finger on the pulse of what the American working class wants.
And, well, except there could be, oh, sorry, hey, you go.
Well, no, I was just going to say, I mean, to your point, something you sort of brought up is that Katz and Moraff, their process is almost, it's more like a casting call.
Yes.
Than it is any sort of actual political deliberation.
Well, yeah, that's the problem. When you're doing a casting call for a political figure, it's really just surface. And that is literally what Moraff did. He said he was looking through thousands of potential candidates. They wanted to run a Democrat against a progressive insurgent Democrat against the incumbent Democrat. And I don't know where he was looking, but he was looking, and they came across this YouTube video of this, you know, burly guy who spoke pretty well, had a beard, was driving a boat and talking about protecting this particular bay because it was essential to his business. And that was pretty much all the background check that they did on this guy. And it showed, right? Because what happened? There were the Reddit posts, okay, where he's talking about being a communist and other things that I can't say on a family podcast. There was the Nazi tattoo, right, which should have sunk him and is a pretty sad testament on the state of American politics that it didn't, and that there are people who continue to defend him up until not just the first sexual abuse allegation, which came from a Republican who could be written off. It was the second woman who came forward, who is a Democrat, is a liberal, said that she struggled to come forward with this allegation because she actually agrees with everything Plattner stands for. And she felt guilty taking him down, but she figured that it was more important, you know, for the country that people knew this about him. It took that much to get this guy to he was basically forced out. I mean, he was putting up some pressure at the end, but he did choose to leave. And now, you know, the Democrats are now in a really tough spot in Maine, right? I mean, it's just a couple of months now to the election. This guy that they've chosen, Troy Jackson, I think he came in third running for governor a couple of years ago. So he's not the best potential candidate that they have. So this really screwed up. I mean, Moraff and Katz really screwed this up. And a lot of other Democratic consultants are on the record attacking them. basically saying, these two amateurs didn't know what they were doing, kind of cleared through, didn't listen to the Senate leadership, ignored Schumer and the other and Gillibrand and the other kind of leaders of the party in Washington, because they think that they know better. And I think what happened was they were really, Katz in particular has been really high on his own supply since the Zoran win, which again he should get credit for. That was one of the most incredible American, come through, breakthroughs in recent American political history. But he thought that he could apply that model in like one of the most liberal cities in America. Okay, he thought that the same kind of model might work in a place like Maine, which is an interesting state. It's it votes for president Democrat, but it's purple otherwise, and it didn't work there, obviously. Well, but we'll see if the Democrats hold on to the seat.
Right.
But the Plattner, Morath-Katz strategy was an obvious failure.
Something occurs to me, didn't occur to me when you were writing this piece or I was editing this piece or anything like that, but it occurs to me that there is a weird analog that what Democrats know is that they have a problem with the white working class. And they've known this for 20 years. That problem has been increasing for Democrats, the white working class problem.
Yeah.
And so every cycle, there is some guy who is a congressional candidate from Indiana who didn't finish high school and wears a lumberjack shirt and chops down a tree and is a veteran. And boy, he's tough talking and he is for Medicare for all, or he's for single payer. He's like very left, but he codes right in theory. And people go crazy and they raise money and everyone's so excited and all of that. And yet, of course, those candidates, because of the positions they take, do not in fact appeal to the white working class. And I am struck by a similarity to, let's say, the Republican Party in the tail end of the 1990s, beginning of the 2000s, where Republicans were very frustrated at the inability to score points with African Americans and Latinos and others, because so much Republican-supported social policy was aimed at improving conditions for them. Certain types of tax cuts, school vouchers, school choice, which actually, in the case of Milwaukee, for example, was a left-wing Democrats' proposal to create school choice, Polly Williams, in order to help Black kids get an education commensurate with white kids, and all kinds of things. And yet they could never get Blacks and Hispanics to vote for them. But over time, they would recruit these candidates. They would recruit Black candidates or Hispanic candidates, all of whom sort of like checked off all the rights boxes. They would be pro-life, they would be this, they would be that, they would be for tax. And so they were acceptable to the Republican Party because they towed the Republican Party line, but they did not actually have any appeal outside of their physical presentation to the voters that they were appealing to. And this is putting this gloss on socialism or radicalism, which was, of course, supposed to be a boon and blessing and the thing that emerged from the working class to save them from the depredations of capitalism. Nonetheless, as we know and as we've been hearing, the overwhelming support for these DSA candidates comes from educated white people. Like, that is their base, that college towns, all of that. So this whole thing of plucking somebody like Central as though you were casting and placing them is a significant problem everywhere. And because what people want is to get people to vote for them who don't vote for them yet. And yet they, by definition, they almost don't have a fingertip feel for those people because they have no experience with them whatsoever, because the issues that obsess them, like Palestine, are of no issue or no interest to a guy living in, Brunswick, Maine. Like, what does he care about Palestine when gas prices are $5.19 a gallon. So this is a consultant class game that and Washington political game that seems very alluring, and it's constantly alluring, and it constantly doesn't work for either party. But we should now talk about the more mercenary aspect of the game that Morris Katz and these guys play, because we obviously now live in a time in which political fundraising has been revolutionized. So yes, there is a lot of money on the sidelines from billionaires and this and PACs and all this, but also you can take a candidate, put them up, put a link to Act Blue or whatever, and money just will start pouring in from all over the country constantly.
Right.
Tens of millions of dollars. Okay, so Morris Katz is your campaign manager. Your campaign raises $50 million. How much of that does Morris Katz get?
It depends. Like 5 to 15%, I think, is the going rate. Well, usually it's not the percentage amount of money raised, it's of media buys. That's usually how they do it. So, most of that money will, of course, go into media buys because that's the most expensive part of running a campaign. People aren't making big salaries, except for the consultants, by the way. They get a retainer. So they're doing very well at this. And look, there eventually comes, your reputation becomes an issue, because if you're not winning elections, then people aren't going to hire you. And I think the biggest failure in this business, I think, but who managed to go on for a long time, was Bob Shrum, who lost 5 presidential campaigns, beginning with McGovern, Kennedy in 80. I believe he was on the Mondale campaign. He was on the Dukakis campaign. He was not on the Clinton campaigns. And then he was on the Kerry campaign in 2004. So that's 5 or 6 campaigns he lost. It's kind of incredible when you think about it, how he was able to last so long. And he retired, and he's now out actually in California working at UCLA with Mike Murphy, the other sort of spent force on the Republican side, who also did very well for himself in this business, managing campaigns for Meg Whitman, who spent over $100 million on a fruitless gubernatorial race in California. And then he worked for the Jeb Bush campaign, which also spent over $100 million, including, I don't know if one of the only things I remember of the Jeb Bush campaign was that they sent iPads, real iPads, which cost hundreds, if not $1,000, to like every delegate or something in the Republican primary in New Hampshire, so they could watch. It was like pre-programmed with Jeb Bush ads and whatnot, and that each of these Republican leaders got one. And this must have cost the campaign tens of thousands, if not more, dollars, right? So yeah, this is a big business. And I will say, if there's one, well, there are several silver linings to Donald Trump. One, which doesn't get remarked upon, is that he, in a way, and maybe this is only unique to him, maybe he's so sui generis that it won't matter when he's gone. He sort of proved that the consultant class in politics are completely worthless, right? He didn't have consultants. So the extent that there were people consulting him, he didn't listen to their advice, and he won twice, right? And so, he had like campaign managers and what's not. Obviously, there are people like running the day-to-day, but at least in his first campaign, he did not have these consultants. And that's one of the reasons why, by the way, that you saw so many of these consultants go off and start the Lincoln Project, because they were so personally pissed off at him that he had made their business obsolete, right? They were so personally angry that he proved that these guys had no purpose, that they went off and founded these various, sort of like provisional IRA type, the continuity IRA of the Republican consultant organizations, right? Like they're continuing in existence, even though the main organization has been proven, has given it all up. So I think that's been something fun to watch, because I do think in general that these consultants are largely useless.
But, it raises an interesting question, because, in so many ways we talk about the rise in populism on the right and left, and there the loss of gatekeepers and the sort of the weakening of party structures and all that. Can the consultant class continue to coexist in this sort of populist politics indefinitely? I mean, are they sort of headed for a collision here? Inevitably, because
Well, I don't think. Yeah. Well, I can't predict. Yeah, but I can't predict the future. But I do think in general, populism is bad for consultants, right? Because it's a bottom-up kind of phenomenon, whereas the consultant is the complete opposite. He's the Machiavelli. He's going out and having a casting call, right, for thousands of people, and I'm going to select this guy, and I'm going to whisper in his ear, and then we're going to impose him on the folks, right? So it's a completely at cross purposes, this movement to populism. I also just think, frankly, that the kind of democratization of media and political power, right, the rise of these political influencers, okay, people on the left and the right, TikTok stars, Hassan Piker, Tucker Carlson, for better or worse. I mean, there are Ben Shapiro is kind of a political influencer in his own way, right? And they have sort of these fiefdoms, and they have influence, and they can move more votes than certainly anyone before them, and any earlier, in terms of a private citizen in the media being able to influence so many people. That used to be a power that was reserved only to sort of like the media moguls of yore, right? Like the guys who owned newspapers and whatnot. And now anyone can build up a following and become someone who has to be catered to by politicians. And so I think that also reduces the effectiveness, or sort of the need, or the need for, or I should say the value of political consultants.
I mean, look, politics is a business, and it's a deadly serious proceeding, and so there need to be skilled people to help people who are running for office that have very specific kinds of skills. For example, there's a field called advance. So what is advance?
Oh, yes.
Advance
Right.
sets up events, figures out where the speakers, the physical like AV has to be, where the chairs are placed.
It's a
how it
logistics
stays-
operation.
Right, it's all
Yeah.
logistics, and it can extend as far as who's on the plane,
Yep.
flying with the candidates, stuff like that. You need really good advanced people. You need people who can make effective commercials, ads. If they're digitally minded, understand how to cut things for TikTok and Instagram and that sort of thing to make them to make these candidates be fresh in the faces of people who might otherwise vote. All of these things are necessary pieces of structural architecture that undergird any successful widespread candidacy. Who designs the logos, who does this. The consultant, who is a much more general figure, is sort of like a director or the executive producer or something like that, is the figure who supposedly corrals them all together and works with the candidate on message and all of that. And that person, it's not like you don't need somebody to do that, but that person has taken over the last 50 years an outsized role in.
It's very romanticized, and there's this very important. It's a great documentary, The War Room. It's about the first Bill Clinton campaign. It stars basically James Carville, George Stephanopoulos, and it's about this campaign. And it totally romanticizes that. You watch that and you want to be a campaign consultant because it's exciting and it's noble and it's meaningful. I mean, you're shaping the world basically. And I think that movie really inspired a lot of people. If you talk to political consultants, I bet all of them will say that they were influenced by that film. Those who were old enough to remember it, or to have seen it even later. But I do think that time is gone, or it's fading away, I would say.
But people are always that's why this hagiographic coverage of Morris Katz got him a little too big for his britches.
Yeah.
Often the kind of tricks that a a consultant can pull off, or a really brilliant consultant can pull off, he can pull off once. Like he has one big idea.
Sure.
Carville had one big idea.
Right.
Right. In 91, he ran Harris Wofford in a special election in Pennsylvania and ran the election on the catastrophic problems of American healthcare. No one had ever run a campaign on healthcare. Wofford unexpectedly won. Clinton picks up Carville, who had a very bad batting average as a political consultant until Wofford. And Clinton said, I want you to do for me what you did for Wofford. And then Carville becomes this legendary figure.
He's been eating out on it. He's been eating out on it ever since.
Yeah. Katz pulled off this amazing feat with Mamdani, along with Mamdani. But that may be his only, in other words, he may not have a curveball. He may not have a slider.
It's in the interest of the consultant for them to get the credit for things that their candidates should often get credit for. I mean, let's not be mistaken. Bill Clinton was a generational talent. And by the way, so is Zohran Mamdani. As much as I despise the man and his politics, he's an extremely charismatic, media-savvy person. And so, I don't know enough about that campaign, the internal workings of it, who deserves the credit. But I think Mamdani deserves a lot of the credit himself.
Yeah. And Karl Rove said of George W. Bush, whom he ran for, whose consultant he was and was for a long time, he said, if I could have gone into a lab and constructed a perfect candidate for the Republican Party for president in 2000, it would have been George W. Bush. But that's him. I didn't do it. He had it all.
Right.
And it was just a matter of corralling it and running it. And so he had the right attitude because it's the candidate who has to make the connection, not the consultant. I mean, there's only so much you can do to put lipstick on a pig, or to make somebody who's boring look interesting, or to make somebody who is psychopathic and disgusting look tolerable and pleasant, like they sort of tried with Graham Plattner. So, Jamie, that is your piece. We called it Morris Katz's Blue Oyster Cult because, of course, Blue Oyster Cult is the band that famously performed Come On Mary, Don't Fear the Reaper. And what supposedly was Graham Plattner's profession? He was an oyster man.
Oyster farmer.
So blue.
And it's blue.
And it's blue. Democrat, blue, oyster. And then, of course, the cult that followed him until he could no longer continue to run. And, of course, his replacement, Troy Jackson, is a lumberjack. He's actually a professional politician, but he claims to be a lumberjack. So,
is his song the lumberjack song from Monty Python?
I would hope so. I would hope so.
If you don't know what that is, go look it up.
Yes, it's the Monty Python's brilliant gender unspecific working men song. Anyway, so that's Jamie Kirchick's piece in the September issue of Commentary, available to you at commentary.org. So read it, subscribe to Commentary. That will help the podcast. That helps Commentary. It will help you because it will enlighten, inform you, and make you a more educated person on a monthly basis and give you access to 80 years of our amazing archives. So Jamie, thanks so much. And Abe, thanks so much. And we'll be back tomorrow.